Hello and welcome again. This channel is called Old To Do, meaning old customs or old ways. Today's video is called Viking Religion, the Basics. It's meant for any of you who have a very extremely basic knowledge of what the Scandinavian and Germanic religion is. We're going to cover the basics today. And I just have to state up front, the German word for Thor is Donar, like one of Santa's 12 reindeer is known as Donar. And the Scandinavian word for Donar is Thor. These are the same gods. So people in northern Germany, the Netherlands, or Frisia, they venerated the gods today known as the Norse or the Viking gods as well. And that's why I say Germanic often. Also, Scandinavian languages are classified by linguists as Germanic languages. So the Germanic peoples were in Germany, the Netherlands, and then northwards into Scandinavia. The Angles, who are the English who moved to England, were Germanic peoples. So before they became Christians, they also venerated these gods. So going to cover all of that, and let's dig into it. So the basics. There's lots of misinformation on the World Wide Web today. There's accurate information as well. But those new to studying Scandinavian or Germanic or Viking religion will not know if a site is accurate. Unfortunately, you've got to read the historical sources themselves. And at times, Wikipedia is accurate, and other times it's not accurate. Marvel is not an accurate depiction of Scandinavian religion, nor are the TV shows Vikings, nor Vikings Valhalla, nor The Last Kingdom, nor the Northmen movie. These are always accurate, these are not accurate, but they're always entertaining. The sources are the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. These are stories of the gods dealing with the gods. These are different from the Bible, which is the story of God dealing with humanity. So the Bible is passed off as a history book, and people who believe that it is divine believe that the Bible is an accurate history book and must not be questioned. The Eddas are not that way. They are the stories of the gods dealing with the gods. They are not stories that are deemed to be accurate human history, nor are they passed off that way. The sagas are another source. There are many sagas, and these are more historical in nature. These are of historical kings and Vikings and heathen people, and often Christian people. These were written over a few centuries. These are not necessarily accurate histories either, though there are accurate information in them about history. There are also charms. Charms are extremely important. They are some of our oldest sources. Like there was an old Saxon charm in the late 700s called Wormsagen, which is a charm against worms to get rid of worms. There's the Merseburg charms, the first and the second charms. We have the 9 herbs charm in Old English. So we have many of these charms that are several hundred years older than the Poetic and Prose Edda that tell us information about the gods and the goddesses and what heathens were worried about and how they sought to use runes and other methods to heal them. We have rune poems. There's 3 of them. There's an Old English rune poem, which is the oldest, dated to the 900s. We have Norwegian and Icelandic rune poems as well. So there's 3. There's the Old English, the Old Icelandic, and the Old Norwegian poem. We also have Christian and Muslims who write about heathens. Often they are very derogatory because they believe in one true God, and these heathens are crazy people. And we also have archaeological evidence, like we have rune staffs that tell us when the holy days were, hence the solstice and Yule were 2 different events according to this archaeological evidence. And the Germanic peoples had no concept of the word religion. People were born into religion just like they often are today. Most people who are Catholic today were born into the Roman Catholic Church. I'm just throwing this out as the first example that comes to my head. Someone born in the West Bank today in a Palestinian refugee camp, most likely they are going to be raised Palestinian, which means they're Muslim. The same is true for Germanic, Scandinavian, and Viking peoples. They were born into this. They accepted the worldview and the gods and goddesses of their ancestors and their family. They did not really understand leaving your ancestral gods and your family's gods and converting to a foreign god like Christ, or there's no God but Allah and his prophet Muhammad. They didn't understand those things. That was contrary to their way of life. But when Christianity did arrive, the Germanic peoples did become Christians, overwhelmingly so. Heathenry was crushed and disappeared from history, and words like "fornsed" in the Old Norse languages, meaning old ways, words like "Altsedu" in Old Saxon, meaning old ways, and another Old Norse term, "heathen said," meaning heathen ways, were used to describe pre-Christian beliefs. Now, the Vikings were polytheistic. They believed in many gods and goddesses. And the Viking Hof, or the pantheon of Norse gods, were not organized like the Greek pantheon. All the Scandinavian and Germanic gods and goddesses were gods of war, whereas Zeus is the head of the Greek pantheon, and there's one god of war, meaning Ares. There's a god of the underworld, meaning Hades. The Germanic, Scandinavian, or Viking pantheon, they did not have fully defined ones like existed in the Greek pantheon. Now, before I address the gods and goddesses themselves, let's address the holy days. In our modern world, we have three major holidays a year. We have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. Thanksgiving and Christmas are the big two today, but we have many holidays. But in the Viking religion, there were three major bloats or holy days a year, and they were 3 days each. So you have that three triangle symbol. So the numbers 3 and 9 were outrageously important to the Vikings, Scandinavians, and Germanic people. 3 bloats a year for 3 days each. That's a total of 9 days. There's 9 realms, for example. So 9 and 3 are hugely important numbers. When heathens were forced to renounce their gods, they always had baptismal vows renouncing 3. The old Saxons had to renounce Thunar, which is Thor, Woden, which is Odin, and Sosnoth, which was the son of Woden and ancestor of all the Saxons. So, 3, very important number. 3 statues of 3 gods at Uppsala, very important number. 3 bloats. And Odin established it as a law in his land that was in force in Asgard. On winter day, which is the first day of winter, there was a bloat for a good year. In the middle of winter for a good crop. And the third bloat should be the first day of summer, which is victory bloat. This is from Ynglinga Saga, chapter 8. Heimskringla Ola Saga Helga states, now it is their old ways, or their foreign sad, or Altsedu, to hold a bloat in Haust Manuther. Haust meaning harvest, Manuther meaning moon. In all Germanic languages, including modern English, the word moon and month are related terms. We follow a Christianized Roman solar calendar today where months have nothing to do with the moon, but hey, our heathen ancestors were right. Months and moons do go together. So it was their old ways, their foreign said, their heathen ways to hold the bloat to start winter, and a bloat in the middle of winter, and a third bloat to end winter to welcome summer. Also, the saga of St. Olaf says as long as heathenry lasted, he wanted to hold 3 bloats a year, one on winter nights, the second in midwinter or Yule, and the third at the start of summer. So, and I want to state very clearly, we have saga passages that discuss the first and the third nights of winter nights. I don't know why we don't have saga passages discussing the second night of winter nights, but we often have passages in the sagas too stating Yule was 3 days and that they weren't allowed to do any war for the 3 days of Yule, and they avoided doing duels for the 3 days of Yule. So the heathens had 3 holy bloats, 3 days each. And all the Scandinavian scholars, like Dr. Andreas Zautner, they state very clearly the midsummer festivities had no connection with the Odin cult. So where did midsummer festivities come from? Well, they came from, like Christ Mass means Christmas, and that is Christ's birthday on December 25th. Midsummer is the title for St. John's birthday Mass on 6/24. 1225 and 6/24 are Julian calendar dates. These are the solstices on the Julian calendars. But heathen bloats were not on solstices. So let's discuss the 3 holy days in particular. So the start of winter was on a full moon in mid to late October. Beda, which means prayer, that was his name. Beta, often called Bede, stated in 725 AD in his work De Temporum Rationae. He stated the moon by which they began their winter season was called Winter Fulleth, a name compounded of the terms for winter and full moon, because on the full moon of that moon, winter was thought to begin. So in mid to late October on a full moon, we have winter nights or winter full moon. That is when winter begins. Yule would be 3 full moons later in mid to late January. The Chronicon of Theodmar of Merseburg, chapter 17, written around 925 CE or AD, said, "As I've heard odd stories concerning their ancient midwinter bloats, I will not allow this foreign said or out-to-do or heathen said to be ignored. The middle of that kingdom is called Lera or Letteren. In the region of Sealand, all the people gathered every 9 years in January. That's after we have celebrated the birth of our Lord. That's when they offered to their gods bloats." Now, Theodmar of Merseburg was Greek Orthodox, so this means after the Greek Orthodox Christ Mass on January 6th, the heathens were doing Yule. And Sigurblot was the bloat to end winter on a full moon, 3 full moons after the full moon of midwinter. So the rituals in Viking religion, we have bloat, symbol, sacred groves, and votive offerings. These are the 4 main rituals. So here's an example of bloat from the Ynglinga saga. There was a great bloat that was held, and many kings came as it was midwinter. And one winter, when many folks were gathered in Uppsala, King Yngvar was there with his sons who were 6 winters old. So Viking peoples did not celebrate birthdays. They counted their age by the number of winters they lived. The first bloat of the year is winter or winter nights. And the first night of winter was the first day of the Viking New Year. There's also Symbol, which is a drinking ritual in the wine hall and mead hall that's always held after bloat. The Vikings were smart enough to eat first, to drink second. They didn't have drunk driving issues, as automobiles obviously were not created yet. But no one wanted to be riding their horses drunk off their sasses, if you know what I mean. So our ancestors were wise. They actually did not have to complete drunken bloats and symbols. They ate first, and they tried to keep sober. Not that there was anything wrong with being buzzed, but often dumb things were done by drunk people, and the Vikings actually realized that. Sacred grove veneration, very important. We have a law that was forced on the Saxons called the Lex Saxonum. So when the Saxons were forced into Christianity by the Frankish Christian armies, they made this law, number 21, if anyone made a vow at springs or trees or groves, or they made any offerings in the manner of the heathens and have partaken in repasts in honor of the demons, if they're nobles, they'll pay 60 solidi, if a freeman 30, and if a laity 15. So remember, the Christians, while they believed in only one God, they actually did believe the heathen gods existed. They just called them demons. So they didn't want the Saxons or any of the people who they were forcing to become Christians. They didn't want any heathenry in the church. They didn't want heathen ways to continue in the church. They didn't want heathen holy days to continue in the church. They were scared to death of this, so they outlawed it. And then we have votive offerings. The historical example is Tisu, but there are many examples. Not only is there the archaeological site of Tisu in Denmark, which is not far from Lera or Letteren, where, when they had victories in war, they took swords that they bent and threw into a lake and a river, and they had bog offerings and other offerings. So we have archaeological evidence of this at Tisu. We had cult centers. I just mentioned Tisu in Denmark and Lettera in Denmark. But in Old Saxony, which is northern Germany, we had Dunar's Well, which was a sacred well. Today, that is in Westphalia, in Porta Westphalica. We had the Donar's Oak of the Chatti, which is in modern Hesse in Germany. We had the Irminsul, which is in northern Germany, which was historically called Saxony. That's where the Saxons lived, and they were majorly heathen. The Saxons who stayed in Saxony and who did not go to Angleland with all of the Angles and some Saxons, they absolutely fought becoming Christians, whereas the ones who went to England became Christians much quicker and did not fight it so much. There was some fighting against it, of course. And of course, there's Uppsala, Sweden. The word sala means hall. Our word saloon and salon comes from it. Uppsala means upper hall or upper saloon, and this is in Sweden. Now, I mentioned the Irminsul before. You can see that, like, wow, this is actually natural. And the Irminsul was on top. Actually, the Irminsul was right there of the Saxons, so that's modern Obermarsberg, which was called Eresburg. And the Royal Frankish Annals in 772 AD, also called the Reichsannalen, state that the most glorious Lord King Charles, or Charlemagne, held an assembly at Worms, and from Worms he marched into Saxony. He captured the hill fort at Eresburg and proceeded as far as the Irminsul. He destroyed this idol and carried away the gold and silver he found. A great drought occurred, so there was no more water in that place where the Irminsul stood. So the glorious king wished to remain there 2 or 3 days in order to destroy the temple completely, but they had no water. So if it took Charlemagne's whole army 2 to 3 days to destroy the temple and the Irminsul itself, it had to have been a massive site for sure. So there were cult centers in the Viking Germanic religion. Now, I said Irminsul, this is a Saxon name, but the Old Norse equivalent would be Yggdrasil. And there were 9 realms. Again, 3 holidays being 3 days each. That's 9. You have your 3 triangles with 3 points, meaning 9. You have your 9 realms. You have the world tree that holds the 9 realms together, whether it's on its branches or at its roots. This was the universe according to the Germanic peoples. Now, I'm using Old Saxon spellings here, so Isgard would be in Old Norse Asgard, which is the dwelling place of the Ace, which means gods. We had Alfheim, which is Alfholm. In Old Norse, this would be Alfheim, the home of the Alpha or the elves. Tolkien says Middle Earth, but the Saxons said Middle Yard, which is the middle realm, the world of men. In Old Saxon, Rieshem, which means giant home, but in Old Norse, this was Jotunheim. In Old English, this was Ettenhem. It was the home of the frost giants. We have Nevelhem in Old Saxon, which is fog home. In Old Norse, this is Niflheim, or foggy, icy realm. We have Muspelli, meaning fire home. In Old Norse, this is Muspelheim, the home of the fire giants. And of course, we have Hel, the realm of the dishonorable dead. We also have Dark Elf home and Vanaholm, a home of the Vanir. To save time, I'm going to go through this list of gods and goddesses pretty quickly. If you want to pause the video at times, I'm going to skip them, some of these, but Bragi is a son of Odin and a husband of Eden. We have Forseti, the son of Balder and Nanna, to the Norse. Freya and Freyr are gods known only to the Norse because in Germany, especially England, the English were converted first, but actually the Franks were converted first, the English second. But the people south of Scandinavia were converted first. So as the Germanic religion continued to evolve over time, you had Freyr and Freya, which came later. So Freya comes out of Frigg. Ode comes out of Odin. I'll mention that more later. But Frigg is the wife of Odin. While I say she's the head female goddess, it's because many people say Odin is the head of the gods. This is not really the case, but Odin is, in a sense, at least a leader of the Aesir, but I wouldn't put him to the level of Zeus in the Greek pantheon. So Hother would be a son of Odin. He was a blind god who accidentally killed his brother Balder to the Norse, but to the Saxons, the English, Jutes, Frisians, and Franks, he was a human hero, just as Balder was a human hero to those tribes, but he was a god to the Norse. So Jorg is a sexual consort of Odin and also the mother of Thor. She is known as Earth. We have Njord, who's a Vanir god, associated with the wind and the sea. His wife is Skadi. He's the father of Freyr and Freya. So before I said Od is the husband of Freya, just as Odin is the husband of Frigg. So many scholars like Dr. Jackson Crawford believe Od and Freya grew out of Odin and Frey. Odin and Frigg, excuse me, and I absolutely believe that as well. If you drowned at sea, you went to Ran. If you didn't die in war, you went to hell. According to the sagas, if you died honorably in battle, Freya and Odin would choose half each, which is a clear sign it was Odin and Frigg, and later probably Ode and Freya. Half went to their halls, but to the Germanic tribes to the south, it would be Odin and Frigg's hall that they would go to. Of course, there's Thor, the thunder god, god of the sky. Um, Sif is his wife. In Old Saxon, this would be Sib. In modern English, this would be Sib. Um, your siblings would be your brother or your sister, but also the spouses of your brother and sister and the children of your brother and sister. So Thor's wife was Sif. In Old Saxon, this would be Thunar and Sib. So that is where our English word sibling comes from. So very important. Sosnoth is also a god known as Saxniat in Old English. He's the son of Odin and founder of the Saxon peoples. We have two families of gods and goddesses. We have the Aesir and the Vanir. The Ace is our word meaning God, and the Vanir are associated with fertility and wisdom. They keep the planets spinning and the crops growing, things like that. We also had elves and dark elves, which are often called dwarfs. And notice it's dwarfs, not dwarves. Dwarf with the VE is called a token error in improper English. It's called dwarfs. And we had whites or Vatir in the Scandinavian. Uh, so if you like this video, visit our website at altitude.com. Visit our blog. I've got about 110 blog articles up at altitude.com/blog. And like and subscribe. Thank you so much.